All right, like we said, almost statement win of the season for 77 minutes. This was a Chelsea side. Everyone was behind. We were excited. The bridge was rocking. Playing Arsenal off their international break, big bogey fixture, right? But it honestly looked like it was a bogey for Arsenal. They were flat. Their big players weren't showing up. Chelsea came out ready to go, had a great press, forced them into some mistakes. It felt to me, Clayton, like we were winning our 1v1 duels. You think of the Cucurella, Bukayo Saka, Malagusto. He was in there getting stuck in against Martinelli, who had done really good. Even the midfield against Declan Rice, Connor picking his pocket, Jorginho very limited, and Martin Odegaard, who was not involved. It was the greatest of starts. Finally got the goal in the 15-minute, dominating possession, but at the end of the day, it kind of slipped out of our hands. But Clayton, as far as up to the 77-minute, it was such a dominant performance. The bridge was so audible on the broadcast. I just kind of take me through the first, maybe even half.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great atmosphere. I mean, London Derby, it's a 5:30 kickoff. You know what happens before, a lot of action in the local hostelries that you guys have frequented, and it's loud, it's better. And what was good that it built, because there's obviously nervousness. I mean, they are a bogey side. We haven't beaten them for 5 years now, and they're a good team. They're a good team. They just come off a win against Man City, and so that there's a sort of apprehension. But we were up for it, and they weren't. And one of the things that hacked me off, and I think I said this to Nick on sort of on a message, was, Arteta afterwards, we were very poor. Well, why were you poor? You were poor because you had no time on the ball. You were unsettled. We were all over you. I mean, the first half, we completely dominated them. I completely dominated them. They did nothing. They didn't have a shot on target in the first half. I don't remember Mr. Sanchez having anything to do in the first half. It was a performance that we've been waiting for. It was a performance that we basically hadn't seen for a long time. It was cohesive. It was passionate. It was everything that we expect to see from a Chelsea team. And it was fantastic. Ultimately, we looked like a team. And that is what you want to see. You want to see us working hard and looking like we want it. The worst thing about some of the performances last season, and even, you think back to West Ham, it was just damp squib. You couldn't see anything. There was nothing there. Ultimately, we didn't win the game, but you can't not but be encouraged by what you saw yesterday. You really can't.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I think yesterday, and maybe I'm misstating this, but I think yesterday was the first time that I saw a Pochettino game plan come together with the whole team bought into it so far this year. And of course, it's going to take time, right? It's going to take a lot of time. These are all young players. We've caveated and everything this year just to make sure that people realize it's a young team and it's going to take time. But the pressing was impressive as hell. We scared Arsenal into back passes and back passes and back passes yesterday. It was intense. The spacing of our players in the press was excellent all game. The hard work of your Cole Palmers and your Conor Gallaghers up front made Caicedo's job that much more impactful in midfield, made Enzo's job in transitioning the ball forward when we did win the ball back that much easier, and made our defense's lives a lot easier too. Even Cucurella, who I think, I second your earlier statement, Clayton, who had an excellent game, everything moved together and moved back and moved together and moved back. It did look like one unit instead of three different pieces trying to figure out a way to work together. And that is incredibly encouraging. There can be no doubt about it. In these big matches, I kind of equate these things to, title fights in boxing. And the worst thing that you can do is wait to get hit. I mean, it's just go
Oh
out
yeah.
and start swinging right away. Make sure that they know that this is an actual fight. And we haven't done that to them in a long fucking time. It's been a long time since we've come out and hit them first and then see what they have, right? And yesterday they didn't have anything. I mean, really, it was, some simple mistakes that got them back into the game, but it wasn't of their own making, and I think that's the encouraging part is if the team can play like this, especially in this stretch that we have coming up that is pretty damn difficult, there's a lot to be optimistic about.
Yeah, I felt like the fullbacks were really standout in those performances where they were like lockdown defenders. They didn't go. I mean, Malo Gusto went forward a little bit, Cucurella not so much, which you're fine with. Sit back and just man mark Martinelli and Saka. So much go through them, and you constantly were forcing them backwards or picking their pocket and then starting the counterattack. And so I think that was a bright spot, especially when it freed up the midfield, who I'll touch on a little bit, to do their thing as well. But I felt like, to me, those are elevated performances, especially Clayton. They're not your starting fullbacks when everyone's healthy, right? Like, this was our backup left back, backup right back. Malo Gusto coming off a suspension, got his France debut, hasn't really been at the squad that long. Cucurella constantly getting battered when he's out there, right? Like, he's well aware of what the Chelsea supporters think of him, but he's now stacked a few performances in the right side. And I thought that was a very tangible part of the pitch that Chelsea dominated.
Yeah, I think in light of the fact of who they were facing, who are two of the most dangerous wingers around, they were fantastic. I think, I can't remember, it might have been Matt Law in one of your pre-season shows or what have you, highlighted the fact that the Gusto purchase sort of went under the radar. And I mean, because you got to remember, he's really young, isn't he? He's only about, was he 19, 20, something like that? He's a fabulous player. He really is a fabulous player. And, because of Reece's injuries, we need decent backup at right back, and we now have it. I mean, we really do. You can't, when you see his name on the team sheet, you don't, obviously you always want Reece playing, but when you see his name on the team sheet, you cannot see that, certainly defensively, that team is in any way diminished. I mean, this is a proper right back. Cucurella's different. Cucurella's, the last 3 games that he's played at right back, he's been excellent. He's been really, really good. And, he's had an awful start to his career at the club. Really, really awful. I mean, he was poor last season, really poor. When he came in, you thought, that's a great purchase. Okay, we paid too much money for him, but, what else is new? But you just didn't see it last season. You just didn't see it at all. He had a couple of games where you thought, oh, yeah, not bad. This season, he's on a different level. And yesterday was certainly, as far as I can remember, his best performance at left back that I've seen. And as you say, Brandon, he just didn't give them a sniff. And what I like about him, he's got something about him. He's, we're too nice as a team and have been for years, and we need a little bit of S-housery. He's got that. I don't know if you saw, like, there were a couple of things where he's sort of growling. He's like a terrier. He's not happy. And that's great. That's what I want to see from my players.
So true. To pin it real quick, Nick, Gusto is 20, turns 21 May 19th, right? So our average age is 24.8, and that's with a 39-year-old on the pitch. Arsenal was 25.6. We know they're also a young and upcoming team, but I mean, almost a year younger on average. So anyways, Nick, I know you wanted to touch on those fullbacks.
Yeah, a special shout to Cucurella yesterday. I think Saka right now is the hardest assignment that a left back can have in the league. Saka's playing extremely well. He's obviously a quality player. He's now a starter for England. Like, these are not easy assignments. He's a super, super tricky player as well. Has the skill and the strength to get by lesser fullbacks. And Cucurella never let him out of his sight yesterday in open play. I mean, he was on him, connected to him, and I was praying that we would do some sort of man marking exercise yesterday, because when those players are allowed to float between the lines, that's when they're most dangerous. That's when they really get going. And I thought it was super smart to just Gusto's on Martinelli, Cucurella's on Saka, and then you trust your center backs to figure out the rest, right? Caicedo kind of hung around Odegaard a little bit more, which I thought was super smart, just made him uncomfortable enough. It wasn't an N'Golo Kante type of shadowing thing, but it was just enough to kind of put him off for most of the game. Very, very smart game plan. And the players executed it, right? You can have a really smart game plan, the players don't execute, and it doesn't mean shit. So they actually did really well yesterday, and they were aggressive. Like, I love the aggression. Obviously, we don't want the red cards to come with the aggression, but we want it to be interesting. And Saka was visibly frustrated the entire match yesterday. The entire match. Even when he got the assist, he was still visibly frustrated because Cucurella was right up him.
Yeah. The other part of this squad that I felt really turned up was the midfield. Holy Moises Caicedo. My word, he looks fit. The press and the ability to force bad passes, Nick, was there from this squad. Caicedo and Gallagher pressed the hell out of that midfield. Enzo got involved. His ability to retain possession in tight spaces and wriggle out and kind of release the ball. It was I think it's probably the best game. I was in Discord for the match yesterday, and I asked, I was like, is this the best we've seen Enzo? And I think everybody was like, from recent memory, absolutely, probably this season. So again, like Gallagher continuing to do a little bit of everything, Caicedo being an absolute destroyer back there, and also covering an immense amount of ground. This, short of a goal, because we know Enzo still hasn't proved that he can score goals. Connor had his half chance, he was offsides, but like that is right now the only thing missing, it feels like, from this midfield, especially when you're going up against the Jorginho, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard. Jorginho probably is their weak link. They wish they didn't have in there, but Declan and Martin Odegaard are considered a couple of the top midfielders in the Premier League in recent memory. So they stepped up too.
Yeah, we didn't really even play Jorginho yesterday. We just kind of let him sit there and kind of pass sideways, which was hilarious to see from the other side. But I thought that, when Odegaard floated in, Caicedo was right there, knew exactly what he was trying to do. I thought it was just a masterclass in the way that he was kind of patrolling that area of the field. And then the other thing about Caicedo that I think went under the radar when we signed him is that he is an incredibly accurate passer moving the ball forward. And there were some passes that were floated out to the wings that went to Cole Palmer or Raheem Sterling or even Mudryk that allowed them to run with the ball after that. Like, he is not just a destroyer. He's not just going to win you the ball back and then freak out with the ball at his feet. He actually does move the ball forward really well. And I am incredibly impressed by him. I think in these big games, Clayton, you're going to see the best of him because he will have real challenges in transition to move the ball, and he seems up for it.
I think it was a Fulham game, and I just thought, hello, we've got a midfield. These three are working really well together. And I thought they were excellent yesterday. It's interesting what you were saying about Enzo, because of the three, I would say he was the quietest one, and I'm not criticizing him, but he wasn't as busy in the game as Caicedo and Gallagher from my perspective, but what do I know? And who knew that spending £200 million on two midfield players would get us a good midfield? Doesn't always work, but it has done. I mean, I have to say that I love Enzo, and I think Enzo is just an absolutely class footballer. I had seen very little of Caicedo, other than, when we played Brighton. He's fabulous. He's fit, and he is fantastic. And what can you say about Connor? The much still bizarrely maligned Connor. I mean, go figure. I don't get it. I basically bigged him up at the beginning of the season when it looked like he was going, and I got lots of dogs abuse. He never gets in. He's never going to be a class player. He's not good enough. Every team that wins the league has got a Gallagher in it, a player that you may not immediately think he's the number one player on the team sheet. I mean, apart from the fact he loves the club, which you can't buy, that's he wants to be out there. He wants to play, and he wants to play for Chelsea, and that for me is a huge thing. I mean, my biggest fear is I don't know what the contract situation with him is, because I know that the owners, if you got less than 2 years left, they want to shift you. Has he been offered a new contract? I mean, that's a big thing, because he just looks the part, and making him captain, genius.
He was fantastic yesterday. I mean,
Again.
he was, yeah, again, yeah, no, he really was. I mean, he was playing center forward for a little bit in this game. He was like mixing it up, and Palmer would kind of drop deeper, and then he'd move up, and then he would lead the press, and then he would drop back. And I just thought the understanding of those four up front was fantastic, especially because we didn't have that sort of target player. And he got stuck in on some tackles, which I really appreciate. I think him and Declan got tangled a couple of times, which was interesting to see. Because I still think Declan's a fantastic player, and I really like watching him play, except when he's playing against us. So it's an interesting one, but God, he was all over the place yesterday. I mean, pure heart and guts, and again, big games, big performances. You can count on him to absolutely lay it out on the field, no problem.